have not learned anything on tendering, how does the tendering process happen and the details of that during colleges, right? We don't get ready-made material from engineering colleges, so eventually we rely on our own training mechanism. So the faculty is not probably updated what's happening in the industry. I would not call it even 5% done. It's a story of next 30-40 years. And the construction industry employs about 40 to 50 million workers. We are doing about 6-7 lakhs crores of projects, which is going to grow phenomenally for next 30-40 years for sure.
In today's episode, we have with us Mr. Kishor Jha. He is the VP of Tata Projects and he has about 20 years of experience working in Southeast Asia, West Asia and in India as well. He predominantly works in the infrastructure sector. He is currently with Tata Projects as their VP of Project Management, Project Control and Risk. He also takes care of all of the infrastructure and the energy sector projects. Now, before that, he worked for 2 years with General Electronics. And before that, he worked for almost 15 years with L&T as their project controls manager. So let's start with the journey in the infrastructure sector. So you've got experience in West Asia, you've even worked a couple of years in Malaysia, and I think in the last 4 years in India as well. So can you just tell us a little bit about your journey in the infrastructure field, the kind of projects you've headed and the kind of multiple hats in the different roles that you've executed in this industry?
Sure, Jennifer. Let me first of all thank you for having me here. I am a mechanical engineer from NIT Jamshedpur. Now it is called NIT, those days it used to be REC. And after that I did my post-graduation from IIT Madras on construction technology and management. And right after that I joined Larsen & Toubro. So my first posting was at site. As usual, normally L&T will recruit the folks from different colleges and put them to site, different site across India. And so yeah, first job was Tata Steel Blast Furnace Jamshedpur. There I worked as site engineer and then moved to planning. So after that I went to Haldia. There was a coal berth terminal being built for International Seaports of Haldia Limited. Worked there for about 2 years, then moved to Bangladesh project where we were building like one of the world's record projects. This was like one longest belt conveyor of the world. So they call it single flight, longest 17 kilometers. So it's a cross country from Meghalaya to Bangladesh. So you will have like crossing the country from India to Bangladesh. And after that I moved to Malaysia. So Malaysia we were working for Petronas. There was a huge petrochemical lube base oil complex. And then I moved back to India. We were, in India we were doing a project for Kane Energy in Rajasthan. So that was like first of its kind, because in India typically you would have heard oil from Bombay High Seas or Krishna Godavari Basin. That was the first of its kind project where we had oil in we call it like onshore oil field. Earlier it used to be offshore mostly. After that so almost 9 years I was at various project sites and then moved to headquarters. There I handled like typical office jobs like operational excellence, a strategic plan. We also set up few competency centers there. So this was about one stint I would say. Then large part of course I had Malaysia and Bangladesh in between, but major international exposure started after I moved to Middle East. So I was there in Sharjah office, taking care of business development, estimation. So as you see, L&T made sure that I'm covering like most aspects of the project management. And last 2 years, my stint was in L&T Kuwait as a chief executive there. So yeah, post that I moved, and it was like I moved to my core, I would say, the penchant I have for development of tools and project controls. So I got an opportunity to work for General Electric for grid solutions. I was heading the project controls center of excellence. It was a global project control center of excellence. And we were supporting like 7 regions of GE grid solutions. So it's a huge experience. I would call it like it's it's like a master's course or some fast-paced 2 years course. And then last 2.5 years, I have been working for Tata projects. It's again exciting because the company is growing very fast. You might have known about most of the projects you hear is backed by L&T, but then we are next to L&T as a professional, organization. So I think so far so good. I think this is what I have done in 20 years. Has been quite exciting, I guess.
Yes, beautiful growth. But one thing I've really understood from your profile is there's been a lot of site work initially that you had to take upon to grow up to a particular standard, a particular role, right? So is this the foundation, the site work that is in effect when it comes to being project manager in the field of civil? Is that very, very important to you?
I guess so. I think it is very important because eventually the folks from an engineering college would be leading the projects and they will be leading the businesses. So if you want to lead a business, unless you have understanding of ground, you don't get the pulse. So I think the first few years, okay, in my case, I spent maybe more. My seniors used to spend 15 years. In our case, we were like 8-9 years. But I think today, in 3-4 years, same kind of experience you can gain, and then post that, the office works are like kind of given. Site also is not same nowadays. There's a lot of difference now. Earlier it used to be archaic. So
over the decades, a lot of changes have also come to the way the processes are run. So India aspires to grow at a breakneck speed when it comes to the infrastructure industry, at least over the next decade. So given that, what do you think stakeholders should be doing to boost this growth? I mean, are we actually doing it currently, or is there something that we have to do extra in order to boost this growth?
Yeah, actually, you are absolutely right. I think there's no question India has been growing at what you say is like breakneck speed is perfectly.
Yeah, even given the pandemic, I think they're doing quite well. So
yeah, you are right. In fact, there was an article recently, India's growth is delayed but not disrupted. So that is what they say. It might be a little delayed, but directionally, I think we are doing, we are in the right track. If you look at, we're talking about what, 16% of infrastructure growth is projected for next few years. And look at some statistics. I often do some presentations now and then. The kind of growth across all sectors, the simple you take like national highways. Today we are creating about 18,000 to 20,000 kilometers a year. It's pretty much like 40-45 kilometers a day. Right? It used to be like just 5 years ago, till 2014-15, it used to be like 10 kilometers a day. So almost 4 times we are doing at that speed. And same thing is true for ports, airports. We talk about power plants, refineries. I think metros, and you must have heard about dedicated freight corridors, which are like only dedicated for your, the freight passenger train and what, no, not passenger, goods train, what you used to call, right? So you'll have like goods train passing at 100-120 kilometers per hour. And India has created a mammoth structure. A Tata project has participated in a big way there. So basically across all sectors, you will see infrastructure has grown rapidly. And it's not, the story is like, I would not call it even 5% done. It's a story of next 30-40 years. So in terms of opportunities, I think this is one area which is going to grow phenomenally for next 30-40 years for sure. We are talking about bullet trains coming, you know that, right? Some of the packages were recently awarded. And same, I think roads are still inadequate. If you see the gaps, a huge gap. So that means what, again, it's a huge scope of progress to be made and future. And that means the employment opportunities for, today if you look at the statistics, about 40 to 50 million, the construction industry employs about 40 to 50 million workers. That's a huge mammoth, 5 crores. 40,
this is like in how long are we talking, 50 to 40 million?
That's like, today we are deploying in the, every year. So we have this many workers available today. And that is when we are doing, about, if you talk in terms of crores and lakhs, we are doing about 6-7 lakhs crores of projects. Now, this brings me to, the national infrastructure pipeline which the government has announced just a couple of years ago. And that, government's $5 trillion economy dream. Today we are at about 3. Everybody feels that this is, really ambitious. It is indeed ambitious target. But the large part of this 5 trillion economy we are talking about will come from infrastructure. And that is what is mentioned in a national infrastructure pipeline, which talks about investment to the tune of $1.45 trillion, which in terms of lakhs crores is like 1 crore. Slightly confusing. Yeah. It's like if I tell you 90 lakh crores, you will understand. It's like 1 crore in next 5 years. That means if you convert that into per year, it's like 20 lakh crores per year in 5 years. Now, these numbers are mind-boggling. And 20 lakh crores, again, if you break it down into, say, you achieve only 70-80% of the plan. This is finally planned, right? But going by the history, I think government has been achieving about 60-70%. So assuming that 70 or 80% you achieve, we are still, and then we talk about only projects, how much of this will translate into the projects, which companies like us will do. It will come about 10 lakh, 12 lakh crores of projects every year. Today we are doing about 6-7 lakhs crores a year. So we are talking about doubling of the size of the infrastructure. And if you're talking about doubling the size, as I said, if you recall, 40-50 million workers are employed. We are talking about huge, almost doubling. In fact, recent study by KPMG says by 2025, India will have the number 40-45 million workmen in construction would become 75 million. Now look at, not only see the numbers, we are talking about people here, right? 25 million skilled people over the next 3, 4, 5 years. Where do you bring them from? And we're talking about a skilled worker.
Right.
So that's like a bigger challenge to cater to. So, but in terms of growth, I would say it has been growing, and India has put some ambitious plan. If we achieve that, I guess that will give a lot of confidence to all the stakeholders. Coming back to your question, stakeholders, what they should do. There are many challenges though, and I think the stakeholders have to work together to make sure that those challenges are mitigated actually.
What do you see are some of the challenges that you're talking about here? What do you see are some of the major challenges that we will have to prepare for?
Yeah, see, I would bucket it under, say, 3 key challenges, I would say. I mean, of course, there are many challenges, but I'm not thinking too much on where do we get funds from, because I think with FDI 100% in construction, the funds may not be a big constraint now going forward. But the bigger challenges in my view are these 3 things. One I have covered, like making sure that India has like 75-80 million workmen available, skilled workmen. The second biggest challenge is, we talked about worker, but what about project management people, engineers, right? The folks who will manage such mammoth projects. So there also we have a huge gap. We're talking about like 8-9 lakhs engineers are required to handle this kind of a projects, right? One may say that, so what, India is producing almost 1 million engineers every year, right? But then you have to remember, most of these folks, out of this million so-called, are not employable, unfortunately, because the theoretical learning what they have from colleges probably don't fetch them the job. And those who are employable, not all are available for this sector. They go to various sectors. You talk about automobile manufacturing, power plant. Software is a big chunk which sucks the best of the talents. So we are talking about where do you get this kind of a skilled workman? And sorry, I'm talking about where do you get this skilled engineers, right? So this is second biggest issue which we have to tackle. And third, and probably very critical, is the scarcity or deficit of top companies who can handle this kind of a complex project. So while there will be a large chunk of projects which can be handled by many small companies, like for example roads and all can be handled, but there are complex projects. We are talking about metros, the underground tunnels. They are highly sophisticated projects where you need all top rung equipments like tunnel boring machine, and many such equipments are required, the high capacity cranes and track laying machine. And so you don't have many companies who can afford to buy this equipment. There are hardly few, handfuls. So and my challenge is, even if these companies are there, many of them are facing problems with the current dispute resolution mechanism, which the country is, I would say, there is little lack of dispute resolution mechanism. Projects get delayed, as you can understand, all the time, and so I think the stakeholders have to come together to resolve some of these issues. How do we tackle,
So you would say that even top level companies with professional project management will still be facing some kind of uncertainties.
Yeah, see what happens, projects typically always, often gets delayed. In fact, often is not the right word. Always is the right word here. For some reason or other, there was an interesting study done by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. It's a government, analysis. It says that in India, they have seen more than 1,000 crores projects. Almost 75% of the projects get delayed. Now, if you ask me, when we call, time is money, that is so true in project management. It can directly relate. If you get delayed, you are going to have cost overruns. And it's very simple to understand because, when you are running a project, you have so many people there, workmen, you have a staff, engineers we talked about, the equipment's mobilized. Overnight, if there is some issue that says, now you cannot work beyond this, there is a right-of-way issue. Right-of-way, in a simple way, if I have to explain you, it's like you have to build a road or a transmission line. It is going through somebody's land, and that farmers are, probably not compensated, or whatever has happened. Somewhere they are protesting and they are not giving you land to work. Now it is typically customer's responsibility to give that to the contractor. That often, we have issues, many projects. And it's like so common across many linear projects especially. So what do you do as a contractor or companies? You have already mobilized. You cannot just suddenly demobilize and say, hey, after 2 months again we'll come, or even 15 days. So you are basically incurring the idle charges. Now this is pretty much known to the customers many times. And because, as I was talking about in the previous section, the dispute resolution framework, there is a lacuna out here, and this needs to be sorted out. Because what happens is, contractor comes out with prolongation claim, which may be legitimate because of the ROW, right of way is not given to the contractor. How do they work? And typically customers would not be willing to approve it even if they know it, because of the framework again I'm talking about. So often it goes in a arbitration route, then it goes to court, and our court process and all. So the whole contract management, the subcontract management needs a huge revamp. Otherwise, I'm telling you, large companies have thousands of crores stuck in disputes. And these companies will lose that willingness I was talking about a few minutes ago to continue to work like this. Because if you have so much of money stuck because of none of your fault, you have just done your job, right? And somebody is not willing to consider that unless you take it through the arbitration court, and even that is, it takes years actually. One of the claim I suddenly remembered, in, which we are handling, the arbitration was given in our favor way back in 2017. The claim was lodged in 2014 and all. I don't want to take the name of the project or customer here, but look at the time frame we are talking about, 2017. The claim is still not settled. It is in favor. The arbitrators have awarded that, that whole claim into our favor. But of course, the customer has taken it to a high court. Now it's in high court. So you have like a huge, huge money at stake, and cash is stuck. So first of all, you don't have many good companies, top companies who can handle such complex projects. And those who have, if they get stuck like this, there's a big question mark of willingness here. So I think government is doing few things, but a lot needs to be done.
And that's going to take a lot of time as well.
Yeah.
So India's infrastructure, when you look at it, it's been increasing its share in the global market. Now we are spearheading many projects in Middle East, South Asia, Africa. So do you think Indians have a special or specific advantage to increase our footprint?
I think this is a good question here. So I would say India's presence is well felt and prominent in Middle East for sure. I think a number of our companies are working there. In fact, the whole the infrastructure sector is dominated by Indian companies. So for Middle East for sure we are there. Africa, there are few projects, few sectors. Transmission line distribution is one sector where we are there. Not in many sectors, Indian companies are not participating so much there. And same is true for Southeast Asia, like Malaysia or Indonesia. Not many companies. Singapore they do hardly have many things there, right? From infrastructure perspective, you're a developed country, you hardly have anything there. So, but I'll tell you, of course, as I said, Middle East continues to be the focus of many Indian companies. But India itself, we talked about, there is a huge potential. So I think companies are interested to consolidate their positions most, in India first, because there's a huge, in fact, the world is looking towards us. And that brings me to the opportunity which are available, at least for our engineers out here, if not workmen, because what is happening is, and this was happening before pandemic also, that you have India being considered not only for software but for hardcore engineering as a back office. The companies like ExxonMobil, Technimont, a lot of global companies, Petrofac, they have huge floor, they have huge offices, deploying a lot of engineers, and guess what? They are doing projects for what? Colombia. Some of my juniors are there in many such companies and they say, I'm working on Brazil project, I'm working on Turkmenistan project. Okay, so right sitting here in Gurgaon or Bangalore or Mumbai, they are working for such projects. So that's a good opportunity opening, and with the pandemic has shown a further way that in fact the work could happen remotely and very efficiently. So that is another opportunity which is again happening right now in India, and it's going to be the order of the day in future as well.
So now let's talk about a key aspect that not a lot of people are discussing about, the talent gap. Now, as you know, in the last 2 decades, a lot of changes has happened, right, in the industry itself. And when you take a look at the education aspect of it, they've not really kept in pace with all the changes that are happening. So what are you foreseeing right now when it comes to hiring people with the right talent? How do you identify people with the right talent in the current scenario?
I think that's a key question, if you ask me honestly, because this has been the issue for many years actually. The challenges are across all the sectors, not only in our sector, which is definitely, I can tell you for sure, in project management or construction management, we don't get ready-made material from engineering colleges. So eventually we rely on our own training mechanism or on the job, skilling. So, but then across other sectors also, I don't think we are producing automobile engineer who can straight away start working in the industry when they join. So these problems are there across the discipline, across the sectors of industry, except for some Ivy League colleges like probably IITs and some NITs and some top-ranked state colleges. I think we have these big issues where the syllabus is archaic, very old, and faculties are probably, with all due respect, because we have all learned from them, the faculty is not probably updated what's happening in the industry. And for whatever reason, it's like probably industry also have to reach out to them and have some sort of a system which makes them aware. So for whatever reason, this has been a big pain area, because today, as I said, we talked about 1 million engineering graduates this country produces, and most of them are not employable. And that's pretty much because of this.
So this is a common story, right, that we hear across from a lot of people, that top tier colleges, they're fine, they're able to do it. But most engineering institutions, they definitely have this kind of a gap that's going on. So can you tell us in depth about what's actually happening right now?
Yeah, so I can talk about the sector I belong to first. For example, infrastructure, when you build infrastructure and you have to do a project management, engineering, so which all pieces do you need, right? And we talked about this is one of the largest employer across all sectors, right? So the things you need are, it starts from tendering, Now, I have not learned anything on tendering, how does this tendering process happen and the details of that during colleges, right? Then you go to engineering. Trust me, today also and that is applicable even for top rung institutes. Today also when we hire our engineers in our company, these folks will not know how to read the drawings. Now, all of them for mechanical or civil, they have learned drawing or machine design and all back in colleges, but they are so off the track. What happens in industry and what they teach there is totally, there's no connect actually. So for months and probably years, the engineers struggle to understand the drawing, how to read that, how to make sense out of that. Now, what do you do in 4 years then, right? And if you have to join such companies. Similarly, you have we talked about contract management, subcontract management. These are the things you have to do when you join a project management companies, right? You have to understand how the construction happens for different kind of projects, right? A constructability, method of constructions, which are the latest technologies which are being implemented in the construction companies. Now, none of this, trust me, is being taught in any engineering college, right? Now, what do you learn there? And I'm talking about, again, because I find in our sphere, it is, in construction project management, we are totally off the track. We learn there, say, solid mechanics. We learn strength of material, machine design I talked about, dynamics of machineries, right? Lot of subjects. I'm not saying these are irrelevant. These are relevant probably, but for a very small fraction of the folks who will join the design organization, right? You have engineering design organizations who will make use of these systems. But what about, and those are probably 2 or 3% of the engineering folks, right? They will join in design organization. What about the rest of the 95, 96% folks? For them, there is hardly anything out of this 4 years course. In fact, I often say, the engineering is the only specialized course, so-called, which is so general in nature. If you talk about even the commerce graduate, they learn 3 years or 4 years commerce, then they do something, say chartered accountancy or MBA. And these are the stuffs, whatever they have learned 3, 4, 5 years, they use the rest of the 30, 40 years of career. Talk about medical graduates, right? So they learn whatever stuff. This is what they do when they become doctor. Journalism. Yeah, lawyer. Everything they learn during their 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of classes, they make use of that, but that's not true for engineers. It's actually very sad, and I feel really pained that why we have engineering course which is not designed to cater to the industry. What can we do for that? And I think, yeah.
So you put that very beautifully, that engineering being a specialized course is the only thing that is so general, in order to have a future there. So I wanted to understand if you think that edtech companies can actually help address this problem.
Yeah, actually, this is exactly where you guys come in. Industry or folks from industry like us will now probably have an opportunity to recruit folks who are trained or upskilled by companies like yours, where they have this gap, right? So I guess this is where it is like a win-win for engineering graduates probably and for the industry. Now there will be a opportunity, a chance that we can meet each other's requirement.
So a lot of aspiring civil engineers are watching this. I would like you to say something to them in terms of what they should be doing for their career, especially to get in top companies like Tata Projects. What should they be doing beyond the curriculum?
Yes. So look, first of all, I'll tell you, when I joined this sector, this whole infrastructure or construction sector was not a very sought after field actually. And given that was the time when talking about 99 to 2001 period, when software companies these companies were an option for folks coming out of engineering college. Otherwise, before the advent of the software or entry of software companies, this was for given that engineers have to toil hard at projects or manufacturing soft floors, and over the period of time they will move up the hierarchy. here was an option for people to join the company, and day one you are given laptop, or not laptop probably those days, computers, and you get an opportunity to work on that, and you are also in an environment which is air conditioned and pretty much vibrant. But so when we joined, it was not so, as I said, not a thing which people has a first choice to join, except there were people like us who wanted to join the hardcore. So we will wait for companies, and most of the guys will be lapped up by software companies and through this campus placements, and some of us would wait for some hardcore companies to come, and of course they will also come. And primary reason was, as I said, the work environment was one thing. And I remember the very first day when I joined my company, we were sent to the site, and myself and one of my friends who were given a room to share. When you go to the site, you have a bachelor's mess, and you are sent to the site, and you will be sharing rooms with some of your colleagues. I was lucky that, I was sharing that room with my friend, but that was short-lived thing, because he one fine day, and that was just 7-10 days later after he joined. So we were going to office means site, and we were waiting for the bus to pick us up, and I noticed that he was wearing a white Zodiac shirt, and I said, "Hey, you are going to site, why are you wearing this kind of wearing this white shirt?" And when we came back in the evening, his shirt obviously had he was working in a stock house, which will deal with iron ore, the coals and all, so his shirt had full of stains, black stains, and he was so fed up, and next day he left actually. So that was the situation, and you will be working at site, and you will be your colleagues. Who are your colleagues here? You will have foreman, you will have supervisor, you have construction folks. And right in the college, when you are doing graduation or masters, you may tend to believe that I'll go there as a project head or something, which happens eventually, but you have to toil for that, right? So, but today I would say that things have changed a lot. Even at the ground, first of all, the working conditions have improved. The messes, so-called, the quality of mess, at least in the top companies, it's much better than how it used to be. And the work methodology, even for graduates from IITs, and we are, by the way, having a lot of graduates, some 50-60 graduates every year we recruit in our company. Even for them, the whole work is quite enticing, because they find now that day one they get either laptop or iPad, and they work on the BIM kind of a thing, 3D models. So, and also there is a lot of stuffs which were in the books earlier, like machine learning and all. They're able to use it. I have my team members who can predict how much of this claim would get settled and when, through this machine learning based on the past data available. So a lot of analytics scope is there, and that's because you have the data residing in some systems, and that helps you in decision making, which way we should go. Same is true for planning. You have Primavera, and same is true for a lot of digitization is taking place in construction industry, and all these things help in finding the solution. So, what excites people is this job giving them enough kick when they come, right? Is it providing a way to find some solution, right? And are they able to participate and contribute in that? And now they are able to do. When I joined 20 years ago, we were all thinking like any supervisor, any foreman is better than what I do, because the jobs were of that nature. So I think my advice to the young engineers is you upskill yourself so that you are useful to the industry from day one. You don't waste time 1-2 years and get lost. I just dream that if I get a couple of years down the line, students recruited from the colleges with upskilling done, and these guys know about a lot of these things which we are practically doing. I think it will be an amazing experience, and even for their growth, they will straight away save like 4-5 years of what we became in 15 years. They could probably become in 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that is credited to the digitalization that's currently happening even in the CPM industry, like you mentioned.
Yes.
So can you just tell us a little bit more about the upcoming or right now what's happening in the digitalization field of it for construction project
I
management?
think, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So digitalization is one thing which I would say has a huge scope in construction. I recently read, and this was an old article actually, I was referring to my old presentation recently, because I'm also taking care of digital stuffs in our company. So they have ranked 22 sectors in terms of how advanced they are in digitalization. And of course, the media houses and probably the banking, they were like top rung 1-2 positions, and the bottom was agriculture. And guess what? Construction was ranked just before agriculture. So it was on 21st. So while people have been thinking in the past that other than some IT enablement, which used to be considered like, have some ERP, have some SAP, have some P6 schedule, that is what max you can do. There is an opportunity for digitalizing whole lot of stuff. Now, what is construction if you talk about? We talk about LMP, right? So labor, material, and plants and equipments. Now, all these three categories, across all these three categories, you can do digitalization. Labor, for example, companies are doing, they are tracking, they are able to improve the productivity of their companies by doing this digitalization. So they have like, very interestingly, what they do is they put RFID tag with some sensors on the helmet, okay? And so you don't need anymore to do a biometrics for attendance. You don't need to ask your supervisor, hey, how many people are there at site today, right? You have this RFID tag and the RFID zones giving you area-wise, okay, this area I have so many counts, this, and this is all visible in the digital platform today. Very exciting. Similarly, you have plants and equipment. You have this lot of gadgets fitted onto the plants and equipment. We talk about any equipment, construction equipment, and you exactly know. So the plants would be either in the plant, whether it is running or not running. Now, these things are not, it's not so, common. It's not happening. It's still happening in silos, I would say. But that means what? That means you have a huge scope of digitalizing all these stuffs. And we were discussing the other day, we dream that, we'll have all these companies will have a control room right in the headquarters or maybe at, different regional setups where you will be able to see, CCTVs are so common at sites, various sites. You can, right sitting in Mumbai office, you can understand how many, what job is happening, how many folks are there, and you can visualize that, and you can zoom in and see, right? Drones bring you the real-time pictures. So I guess there's a, exciting time ahead in terms of digitalization, integrating all this information with schedule. I think this is the area where things are going to happen, and that's not going to happen just in 3-4 years, but you have a horizon of many years actually.
Okay, beautifully put. Now, I have another question. Now you're saying digitalization is going to make things easy, like what growth you saw in 15 years, possibly a fresh undergraduate now could get it in a span of 4 to 5 years. But should an engineer be afraid that once digitalization starts, catching pace, would that actually bring down the number of jobs?
No, not really. In fact, it will improve the efficiency for sure. Because after all, who is managing these digital stuffs? After all, same engineers have to manage, right? It is not reducing the workmen who are working at the site or folks who are supervising the job at site. It is on the contrary, it is improving the productivity, it is improving the efficiency. So I would not be concerned about this job losses or reduction in opportunities. In fact, it is, same thing happened if I don't know whether you were, you were adult enough to understand, but 15-20 years ago, people were talking about all these softwares now will kill all the jobs. What has happened? Look at the situation today, right? In fact, the software companies are growing, the people are getting number of jobs, and other sectors are equally growing.
Right. Demand and supply is always there.
Yeah, in my view, because of the sheer volume of growth which we will be witnessing in future years, there is a huge opportunities, and I would say the big opportunity sector is our infrastructure for sure. And infrastructure is not a typical infrastructure where engineers have to stand at site always. As I said, a lot of these jobs are happening parallelly, which is so exciting. Even for young engineers, I wish these things were there when I joined company 22 years ago. But we had to do a little bit, toil through the whole maze of hierarchy but still, I think we were, when I compare myself and my colleagues with my seniors, we are ahead of the curve. At our age, people will be at certain level, we are much ahead of the curve. And because of all these things which have happened in the last 15, 20 years, and I think one important thing for the folks who will be working at site, keep your eyes open, don't get frustrated, because most likely you will get frustrated when you are at site. This has happened to me, this is happening today also to many of our young smart engineers at site. The questions would come, why I should be here? Why can't I work in a typical other companies? But my advice to them is that this is just a transient phase. You are here to learn stuff by yourself, see stuff by yourself, be there few years. You will be the guys who will be making decisions tomorrow. So this is an opportunity, guys. A lot of folks who get placed in the offices, 5, 7 years, they will never go to site now. And they miss that opportunity. And they will be witnessing in the offices when somebody from site would come, and they will be talking about sensible things which these guys would not have got any idea, and they will be taking the leadership position eventually. So site is an opportunity and not a punishment.
Definitely. I think that's something that's valid that students also have to know. Now, that also brings me to the next question now. Site is very important to start a foundation in construction project management, and yes, there's a progress there. Now, on a general basis, I wanted to understand what is the job ratio for a civil engineer when it comes to management jobs and to design, because I think with the glitz and glam that design jobs give them and the 4 years that they've studied feels much more relevant towards design, a lot of people choose designing. But what is the ground reality when it comes to jobs in the CPM domain, construction project management, and design? What would be the ratio?
Yeah, so if you ask me, first of all, this whole construction project management is not only for civil engineers. You have, because the whole project management, you have projects, of course you have civil projects which are like roads, bridges, ports, metros, tunnels, right? But you also have a lot of industrial projects. We are building steel plants, you have to build refineries and petrochemicals and power plants. So you need to have a blend of civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical and instrumentation. So these folks predominantly make the whole, of course the dominance is still with, because civil engineers are required everywhere, mechanical not everywhere. So yeah, but your question is probably that what is the ratio of folks who will finally go to the design field, and then a whole lot of other things like I talked about, you need a site engineer who supervises the job, you need a planning engineer who does the planning of the whole thing, scheduling, you need costing engineer, you need subcontract engineer, you need contracts engineer. So I would say that not more than 5-7% will get to design, but the opportunities are much more in other sectors actually. So the whole project management, if you ask me, in any organization, you will have probably 5-7%. Even in EPC organization, you will have design engineering jobs availability, and the rest of the people will be doing a lot of other important works. And in fact, nothing against design engineers, but I think the leadership positions are taken up by folks who are doing these operational jobs finally. Of course, design engineers would have career in the design field, but generally the operations which encompasses all this aspect I talked about, they take leadership position, because that is, for driving the project. Engineering is one aspect. You have supply chain, procurement, I talked about subcontracting, contracting, commissioning, construction is a big chunk. So you need to have an overall understanding, and that other jobs give you more such opportunity, and the opportunities are more there. Yeah.
I hope the young engineers who listen to this conversation right now, with this little interview we had with you, are now able to charter their career path in the stream that they should be choosing. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, the wonderful interview we've had. It was quite insightful actually, a lot of research work that's been gone into that, and definitely something that was useful for these students to take into consideration when they start looking at their future rigorously. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I wish you the best in all your future endeavors, Mr.
Thank
Kishor.
you. It's actually absolute privilege for me, and I hope it people, students find it useful. Thank you so much.